Which NFL teams desperately need to crush the 2025 NFL Draft? Welcome, football fans. In this video, I give you my 12 most desperate teams in this year's NFL Draft. What does it mean to be desperate? It means that this team must hit on their draft class or they're in trouble. And that could be for a variety of reasons. If that sounds good, you know what to do. Gronk, spike the like button, show your love, and don't be a jabroni. Subscribe to the BLV. Let's kick it off. At number 12, with the Chargers. The Los Angeles Chargers desperately need to crush the NFL Draft. We saw what Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert could do in year one with an okay mid-roster. 11 wins, a playoff spot, security, a floor was raised in Los Angeles. This draft could dictate the ceiling of the Chargers. They need game changers on the defensive front. They need another playmaker to help Justin Herbert. When you look at the Chargers this offseason, I was screaming for them to acquire another playmaker, for them to go all in, because the Chargers are this close from going from competitive to contender. This close. Now, they did some work on the offensive line. They added some veteran pieces to the secondary. The roster is looking solid. The coaching staff is there. The quarterback is in place. They have Alton Slater at tackle. We know what Ladd McConkey is. They signed Najee Harris. I like it, okay? But you're not done. You're not finished. You might need some youth at the edge position because Khalil Mack is not getting any younger. Your interior defensive line did lose Poona Ford, and it looks a little lackluster on paper right now. I think that's maybe the biggest screaming area of need that they need to address in this draft. And it feels like the Chargers are one or two pieces away on both sides of the ball from really going from competitive to contender. One defensive tackle, one wide receiver or tight end. They need one or two pieces to improve their offense, to become more explosive, to improve their defense, to just become a little bit more game-changing instead of conservative, more aggressive, more playmaking, right? If they can do that, they can catapult themselves into the conversation of contender. So that's why I have the Chargers at number 12. At number 11, the Buffalo Bills. The Bills need a boost from this draft. If they're able to hit on their 3 picks in the first 2 rounds, the Buffalo Bills could win the Super Bowl. When you're talking about the AFC, the Chiefs and the Ravens this offseason, this free agency so far, if anything, they got worse. The Bills stayed the same or got better. The Bills have the 3 picks in the first 2 rounds. The Bills have the opportunity of a lifetime to capitalize. The Chiefs are coming off a Super Bowl loss. That could be their hangover season, so the Bills might be able to avoid them finally. Josh Allen needs to win a Super Bowl. And if he doesn't, Sean McDermott is going to be fired. That's why this draft is so important. If Sean McDermott can't find the pieces in this draft, and I know that he's not the GM, it's Bean, but they're in collaboration. If McDermott cannot find the pieces in this draft to get some stops in January, he's going to be gone. So his behind is on fire in Buffalo. He needs a safety or a corner. He needs some difference makers in the secondary that can make some game-changing plays. that against Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow can actually get some stops. That's what the Bills should be looking for. Sure, could they use one more receiver? Sure. But the offense has never been the problem in Buffalo. Josh Allen's performance has never been the issue. It's always come down to Sean McDermott. Can he get the pieces in this draft to boost the Bills over the top and become more balanced in January? That's what it's all about. Difference makers on defense in this draft. That's what the Bills need. That's what they desperately need in this draft. At number 10, the Houston Texans. We all know what the Texans need. They need an offensive line. Okay, the Houston Texans last year, CJ Stroud was sacked 52 times. 52. The highest pressure percentage in the NFL at 27.2, which I believe was higher than Patrick Mahomes' pressure percentage in the Super Bowl. That is bad. The Texans only have the 25th most draft capital in this class, but they do have 2 third-round picks. They do have 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. So they have enough picks to find some good players to protect CJ Stroud. Otherwise, they don't need a lot. Maybe a big run stuffer on the defensive line on defense. But their defense is already, in my opinion, I've said it once, I'll say it again, probably the most talented and best defense entering the NFL in 2025. So I'm not worried. I don't even think wide receiver is a huge need, because they did bring in Christian Kirk to replace Stephon Diggs, who they were playing without by the end of the season, and Tank Dell should return later in the year, and they still got some other guys that they did pick up, like Justin Watson, Braxton Berrios, and they have Hutchinson, so they have Mechie. They have 3s and 4s, right? Kirk's a solid 2 as long as he's good to go. They need protection. Like, yeah, they brought in Cam Robinson, they brought in Trent Brown, they brought in Lincoln Tomlinson, they brought in Ingram, right? These guys could be answers at 1 or 2 positions, but you need to have long-term security at tackle. You need long-term protection for CJ Stroud. You can't afford another downward season for Stroud. He was so good as a rookie. He was transformative. He made the Texans relevant, right? He was a top 5 quarterback in football as a rookie, and then he fell off the face of the earth because he was trying to force too much, trying to make too many plays on his own. Under pressure. Sped up. You need this young quarterback to regain his confidence, composure, and charisma, because it was off the charts as a rookie, and it disappeared from CJ in his second sophomore season. So maximize the Stroud rookie contract by giving him some protection. And if the Texans can find those pieces, not only can they make Stroud better, but that's going to make the rest of the team better, to the point where they might be the best team in the AFC. I talked about how they have the best defense. They have Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, Christian Kirk, Dalton Schultz, eventually Tank Dell. If they can find an offensive line, forget it. The Texans could be in the Super Bowl. So that's why they're so desperate to make something happen. At number 9, the Las Vegas Raiders. There's urgency for Pete Carroll because he is 73 years old. Geno Smith is not getting any younger. He's 34. And the Raiders are in a really difficult division, arguably the best top 3 in any division in the NFL. It's right there. It's right up there, okay? So the Raiders need to make themselves relevant again. Sure, they're hitting reset somewhat, restart, right? That's why they're not like number 2 or number 3. But they have a chance here to make a huge impact, to change their culture, to alter the direction of the franchise. The first draft for Spytek and Brady, we'll see what they can do in this class. Pick 6, pick 37. Where will they go? Ashton Genty, could he be the superstar pick? Could they go with the wide receiver at one of these selections? They have Jacoby Myers. They have Trey Tucker, but they don't have a true number 1. They also desperately need the corner position. They could use linebackers. Landon Roberts, Devin White. I'm not sure if those guys are really the dudes, right? Eichenberg. So there's plenty of urgency here for the Raiders because of the age of their coach and their quarterback. And I understand those guys were brought in for culture purposes more than anything. More than winning, really. But damn, wouldn't it be sweet to have the Raiders just execute a perfect draft to put themselves in relevancy in 2025. So at number 9, I got the Raiders. At number 8, I already talked about you, Texans. Do you want to come back up again? The Cincinnati Bengals are desperate for a great draft class in 2025. It's kind of obvious. They desperately need defense. They need a defense to complement this offense. Joe Burrow was spectacular, lights out, unbelievable in 2024, and it did not matter. They nearly made the playoffs, but they did not make the playoffs. If Burrow plays like that again, and they fail to support him with the defense, heads are going to roll. I'm going to lose my mind. I can't see a quarterback in an offense perform that well and still not make the playoffs 2 times in my lifetime. Okay? So I need to see some supporting pieces on the defensive line for Trey Hendrickson. You brought in TJ Slayton. I like that addition. So maybe that pivots you from defensive tackle to defensive end early because Myles Murphy has not been working out. Osai's fine, but I feel like they could use another pass rusher. Safety is a bit questionable long term. Is Geno Stone going to still be your dude? Right? Battle, how do you feel about him? I feel like there's a lot of unanswered questions about how the Bengals feel about their defensive personnel because they do have a new defensive coordinator. And I wonder if they're just going to blame all their struggles on Lou Anarumo because Lou Anarumo was known to be a good coordinator before. And all of a sudden, we're throwing him right under the bus. They did change it up. They went with Al Golden out of Notre Dame, a former Bengal coach, I believe. But I don't think Al Golden is just going to make everybody better. He might make certain players better. He might uplift certain positions. They might do slightly different things with their personnel. But it feels like if Jermaine Pratt's out, they might need a linebacker, although they did bring in Oren Burks, but I still think they could use a useful piece, a young piece, a youthful piece there. And like I said, edge, potentially safety, corner, all of the defensive positions are on the board. The only position that really should be addressed offensively is guard and maybe backup running back. Like, those are the only areas that they should potentially address offensively. This should be a straight defensive dominant class. And they should be able to hit on 3 players that could be starters or stars for them. And if they can do that, the Bengals are so good on offense that if they can just stabilize their defense slightly, they could be extremely relevant, like AFC Championship quality team. It's not going to take a lot. That's why it's so important that they hit on these picks, even if they don't have a ton of them. Okay? So take advantage of Joe Burrow at his peak and have a good draft, Bengals. At number 7, the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys desperately need a great draft class. Jerry Jones is impatient. We know this. Now, he did just hire a new head coach, so I don't expect them to fire him very soon. That would be pretty crazy. But this team has more holes than I can remember. This Cowboys team is less talented than I can remember in the last few seasons, the last few years. They have more needs entering a draft than I can remember. They need a defensive tackle potentially, maybe even a defensive end. They need a linebacker potentially because they don't really have any superstars there. They need a nickel corner. They might need offensive linemen. They definitely need a running back and a wide receiver. I don't think they're going to be able to get all those things in one draft. But can they find a couple home run picks? Can they have another great playmaker to add to CeeDee Lamb within the offense? That can totally change how Dak plays and totally change how Dallas is respected by defenses. One playmaker, running back or wide receiver, how does that change them? Defensively, can they find one more piece in that front 7 that can complement Micah Parsons and Adigi Zua? Can they find a couple playmakers, right, on offense and defense? Because this team has not had a great draft in a minute. Their last 3 drafts, they went Guyton, Nealon, Beebe. We'll see what Nealon and Beebe truly are moving forward. Guyton was a bit shaky as a rookie, right? Schoonmaker, overshown, injured, although I like him. Tyler Smith, really good player. Sam Williams, not so much. Jalen Tolbert, not so much. They've been somewhat struggling. Mozzie Smith, not a good pick so far. So the Cowboys have been extremely good at drafting. This is what has made them so solid from a roster construction standpoint over the last 10 years. But they have lost themselves in the draft lately. They have lost themselves. And this is their identity. They have 10 draft picks. They have 2 fifths, 2 sixths, 3 sevenths. Can they find some steals? We will see. At number 6, the New York Giants. The Giants desperately need a new draft class if they want to save Brian Daboll. That was a butchered sentence. But if they want to save Brian Daboll, they desperately need a good draft. And not only Daboll, but the general manager as well. Quarterback. Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson were brought in. They're not the long-term solution. So what are the Giants planning to do? Are they going to pick Sanders at 3? Probably not. Are they going to go second-round quarterback with somebody like Shuck or Milroe or something? And if they do, and what is their process? Because does it work or does it not? Do they get the transformative defensive talent like Abdul Carter? Could that totally change them? If the Giants hit on this draft class, it will buy Daboll more time with this team. It will buy this regime more time, right? If you see that they got some good players in the building now, and you see positive progress, and you see even despite not the best quarterback play, that the Giants have a plan at that position, that there may be a quarterback away from being really interesting, that could buy some time for this regime. They might need a corner. They might need some interior offensive line talent. They have the draft picks to get it done. They have the 3rd overall pick. They're going to get a very good player there. 34, they could get their future quarterback at that spot. Maybe even with the 2/3, they could do the same. They have a little bit of flexibility, right? So my question for them is, can they find enough talent to extend the window of this regime? And that's why I think they're desperate. Because if they miss on this draft class, they're as good as gone. At number 5, the Tennessee Titans. The Titans need a terrific draft class because there's a reason they're picking 1st overall, right? Like, they were the worst team in the league last year. They were absolutely unwatchable on offense. And their defense had game after game after game where they would keep them in it and just absolutely fall apart and give up. The Tennessee Titans have the opportunity for a franchise-altering draft, but they still need to execute. Because if they miss, they're set back another few years. If Cam Ward is not great, if Cam Ward is not good, at least, that's going to set them back. Like, I know that everybody knows that Cam Ward's going to the Titans, and that makes it obvious. But if he's not good, they're done. Like, they're going to continue to be bad. So they desperately need Cam Ward to be good. But then after that, this is a team that needs more than just a quarterback. Like, they could use a big-time pass rusher. They could use a big-time wide receiver. Like, they have positions of extreme importance that are big needs for them. I'm not saying that this draft would make them a playoff team, but what I'm saying is if they can show that they got a couple guys, a couple pieces to build around, that's going to extend the window for Callahan and his crew, and that's also going to make them uplift the fan base, provide a little bit of hope, and have a picture moving forward for how they can attack things. Wow, I just smacked the crap out of my mic, which shows you the importance of this Tennessee Titan draft. They have a chance at a franchise quarterback for the first time truly since Steve McNair. I know Marcus Mariota was supposed to be that, but he was never. So they have 2 fourths, 2 fifths, and 2 sixths as well, on top of that first pick and that 35th overall pick. Those top 2 picks could set the tone. This could be the Bengals with Joe Burrow and T. Higgins, right? So that's why I have the Titans at number 5. At number 4, the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers have the question of, is the window closed? The best way to open a window is by adding young talent that no one sees coming. One draft, especially with 11 draft picks, can be transformative and totally open the window. Brock Purdy might need to be paid, but this is a team that still has upper echelon talent that rivals any NFL squad. San Francisco has Fred Warner, George Kittle, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk. The list goes on. Nick Bosa. This team has ballers, but what they are missing is depth, and what they are missing is quality players to keep those studs together so that those guys don't constantly have to be available and playing at peak levels for them to win. They can rely on depth playmakers. They can rely on solid, young players, okay? I'm not even saying the 49ers need to absolutely crush this draft. If they just come away from this draft with like 3 or 4 quality players, I'm not even saying stars. I'm saying quality complementary pieces. They can be extremely relevant this year, next year, with the way their makeup is as a team. It can extend that window, right? This is a team that's had the 30th, 28th, and 21st most draft capital of the last 3 years. Their positions of need happen to line up exactly with this draft class, which is really interesting. Edge rusher, defensive tackle, those 2 positions might be addressed at number 11. Offensive line, like guard or center, could also be addressed in the mid-rounds. This team needs exactly what this draft offers. And they also happen to have the most picks in the draft, or at least right up there with the most picks in the draft. They have 11 draft picks, 2/3, 2/4, 2/5, obviously their first and second. And this is the team with the weakest schedule in football. If they can hit on this draft, if they can stay healthy with their studs, they can be a contender again in 2025, especially with Kyle Shanahan leading the way. A solid offensive lineman to protect Purdy. A nice complementary defensive lineman for Nick Bosa. Maybe they even get a little aggressive and trade up for a difference maker. We'll see. But they need an edge, a guy for the future to complement Bosa. They need some D tackles because Elliott, Anderson, and Givens are not starters. And a complementary corner for Green and Lenore would be useful as well because I don't think Trey Brown is ideal. They're lacking depth. They're getting old. Now is the time to crush the draft if you're the 49ers. At number 3, the Miami Dolphins. Yeah, the Dolphins are sneaky. They're a sneaky, desperate team. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to the news, but Jalen Ramsey and Tyreek Hill, they have some issues. They got some problems, okay? Teron Armstead also has retired. So that has vacated their left tackle position. They did draft a left tackle in the second round last year, Paul, but his play last year was not phenomenal. It was not fantastic. So the Finns could be after another tackle in this draft. They definitely need to address the offensive line because if they don't, Tua might have to retire. The team is falling apart. They really are. And that's going to signal the end for Mike McDaniel because this team had such high expectations not that long ago. They were expected to make the playoffs last year. They didn't. Some of that fell on Tua's health. The year before, they did make the playoffs and they went out miserably. This team is the reigning defending champion in terms of not winning a playoff game. They're very desperate for a good draft. Because just like the 49ers, they need some complementary pieces. And even more so, they have a complete unit on their offensive line that is completely shaky. They have some uncertainty at quarterback. They have old pieces like Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey that are 2 of their better players, right? Safety is not a very good position for them. Depth at corner is not very good for them. They still got playmakers on offense. They still have explosion on offense, and they still got some good edge rushers. But it feels like this team is desperate to put around the pieces to uplift them back to where they were supposed to be. So Miami better figure this thing out. They have 10 draft picks. If they don't figure it out, McDaniel could be gone. Tua questions will be risen and raised. And they might have to scrap everything and start over. At number 2, the New Orleans Saints. Speaking of starting over, I've asked the Saints to do this for seasons. Now might be the opportunity to finally do it. You have a new head coach in Kellen Moore and pretty much a new regime in that regard. You probably are signaling a new quarterback because Derek Carr doesn't appear he's going to play in 2025. So the Saints were forced into change because of Derek Carr. But the Saints need a spark. They need a big-time difference-making player, whether it be the future of their franchise at quarterback or it be some sort of player that kickstarts some hope for their fan base, because it feels like the Saints fan base is really depressed, to be honest. They don't know the direction of this team. They don't understand their actions. And let's just say they got the quarterback. That would uplift them immediately. Now, they would have to hit on that quarterback. There's other positions of need that they do need. Like corner is a big one. Offensive line is a big one. But without the quarterback, they're not going anywhere in the short term or the long term. And they also need a good draft because they have not drafted a lot of players in recent years that can take over for their old crop of leaders. Guys like Cameron Jordan, Demario Davis, Alvin Kamara, Tyrann Mathieu. These guys are premier players on their team, but they're extremely old and they're out of the door very soon. So they need to find guys that can replace those guys in terms of the spirit of the Saints and the leadership of the Saints in the future. So that's why I have them at number 2. Derek Carr, huge question mark at quarterback. They're kickstarting a new era. Let's see if they can find the QB, but they also need to find a 2017-like draft class where they can find a new crop of leadership. At number 1, the Cleveland Browns. The Browns finally have some draft capital. They have 10 draft picks this year. They have the second pick in the draft, and they have the first pick of the second round. It doesn't look like they'll go quarterback at second overall, and I don't blame them. Can they pick a transformative player? Travis Hunter might be that pick. Abdul Carter has an outside chance of being that pick. Either way, whoever they choose to go with, that player needs to be a spark of hope for this franchise. Something for the dog pound to gather around. And on top of that, can they find a player? Can they steal a quarterback? Can they get somebody that can take the pressure off of the franchise, the front office, the ownership from the disastrous Deshaun Watson situation? Deshaun Watson looms over this franchise until they find a replacement. So that's why they're desperate, because they know that they messed up with Deshaun Watson. They're in the most competitive division year to year in the NFL, and they are extremely irrelevant right now in that cause, despite having a coach who's won, 2 Coach of the Year awards? So, I mean, that's really embarrassing and depressing. And for the first time in a while, feels like their O-line's getting older. It's no longer at its peak and its prime. They need to replenish that. They don't have Nick Chubb at running back. They need a running back. Their defense is obviously very good, but they need to capitalize on these guys because they're getting a little bit older, right? They might be leaving their prime soon, like Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. Linebacker could be useful for them. Defensive tackle's getting old for them. Malik Collins, Shelby Harris. So they need some inspiration from quarterback. They need some hope to move on from Deshaun Watson. And they need a superstar to uplift the dog pound. That's why they're number 1. Those are the 12 most desperate teams in the NFL draft this year. Thank you guys for watching. It's Mitch. Gronk, spike the like button. Don't be a jabroni. Subscribe. Peace.